So this is the work of Ginny Moore. Ginny was a graduate student with me. She just completed her PhD last semester. She's now working for the university, well, actually for the USDA at the University of Maryland. And I wish she was giving this talk instead of me, but anyway, Ginny does great work, and I'm really happy that she's got some great opportunities coming up for her. And this, of course, is Ginny, and she is in the field. Let's see, which button am I going to press here? That one. So Ginny worked on corn earworm, and these are the 3 data chapters from her study, and she actually did recurrent selection. She bred sweet corn with longer husks, and that would help in terms of reducing insect pressure, we think. The data is really mixed on that. She also worked on combining ability of individuals with long husks and also mason. Mason is a naturally occurring chemical. It was originally found in Mexico in corn, silk, and it actually, the insects are, it's an antibiotic essentially for the insects. And then the 3rd chapter was that she did a survey and interviews regarding the management of the corn earworm in organic sweet corn production systems. And this was really about, part of this survey was really to inform the breeders about what would be acceptable and what would be unacceptable to the farmers. And this is Ginny with her crew, and she's measuring, you can see damage on the ear there. One of the things we really wanted to look at when we were doing this is to make sure that we didn't select for, there's 2 ways to select for long husks. One is to select for husks that extend out beyond the ear, and the other way is to select for little tiny ears. So we wanted to make sure we didn't do that. So she's made sure that all of the ears that were selected were at least 7 inches, and then we would look at the husk beyond that, the husk extension. For sweet corn growers in the upper Midwest, outside of the weeds, the corn earworm is by far the most difficult pest to control, especially for organic growers. It's a generalist feeder. This is in the big picture closest to me is a cotton boll, and in the south it's the bollworm. So they live all winter eating stuff in the south, and then they come up north to cool off. Sweet corn, tomato, I can look at this. Sweet corn, tomato, lower right is soybeans, and the one in the middle is snap beans. So they're everywhere, and they're voracious. And wrong direction. And they also move great distances. They do not overwinter in the north, at least not yet. No, they're coming. They don't overwinter in the north. They overwinter here in the south, and then they move up, and they can move 1,000 miles, an individual moth easily, because down here in the summertime we get the great big tornadoes and not hurricanes, and the big thermals, and they just move up with those thermals and then drop down on our fields. So, and this is an interesting map. This shows, the dark red shows where the insect overwinters 24 years out of 24. The white areas are areas that the insect doesn't overwinter at all in the 20th century. So here's Wisconsin, here's Wisconsin and Minnesota, the 2 big sweet corn producing states. Washington State is the 3rd. And you can see that the insect's coming north, and the green, I believe, is 6 or 7 years out of 24 the insect will overwinter. So this is going to be a big threat, and it's going to be a big threat especially for organic growers, because control is limited. There are some folks, most of the controls are kind of management, timing and things like that. Some folks do actually squirt oil, mineral oil into the silk channel. You really can't do a lot of acres with that, and it does have problems. Sometimes it actually reduces pollination, and of course that's very undesirable. There are some natural, organically approved insecticides, bacteria, things like that can be applied also. So this part of the talk is really, and that's why I'm in the sociology section, this is really about Ginny's work in terms of working with farmers or surveying farmers and finding how they feel about the corn earworm and how they manage it. So 4-page survey, we wanted a good success rate. We all get surveys all the time. I almost always throw them away, so I'm sympathetic. 441 recipients. This was based on the USDA Organic Integrity Database, which lists people self-identify as sweet corn growers, so we sent this out to all of them. The topics: farm and farmer characteristics, sweet corn production, pests and management practices, and earworm management specifically. Oh, and Ginny also did 12 interviews with organic sweet corn growers. Survey response: 14 were removed as ineligible. 103 valid responses, which is a pretty good rate. 24% for this kind of study is pretty good. Population characteristics of the farming experience: mean year of 19 years, sweet corn grower for 16 years. You can see the acreage numbers. We're talking, the respondents really aren't large sweet corn growers, probably mostly CSAs, maybe some farmers market folks. We probably didn't get any of the processors in here, even though they would have been sent out to them as well. Excuse me. So direct consumer markets were widespread. Farmers markets, good return. A CSA, probably the best return respondents. And then you can see down at the bottom the wholesale, processing, and retail, less in terms of response. In a typical year, most farmers reporting have earworm damage, or they have to struggle with the earworm. Another question Ginny asked was, which of the insect pests are the most severe? And just running across here very quickly: aphids, armyworms, black cutworm, the corn earworm, I should look this way, the corn rootworm. The next one is the corn borer, European corn borer, and then flea beetles and wireworm. So for the respondents, and remember that map, the respondents are mostly in northern regions, almost entirely. That's because the folks in the south don't grow organic sweet corn, and grow very little organic sweet corn. And the reason they do is because of the pest pressure. But by far the corn earworm is the worst, and the blue is 1 out of 3 years, and the gray is 3 out of 3 years. So every year, many of our growers suffer from corn earworm. We asked the farmers what the threshold level for corn earworm damage, and not unexpectedly, restaurants and wholesale have the lowest. Well, here 8.7. Wholesale is the lowest by far. We seem to hear from, and I'm going to show you some controversy about this in a minute, that the CSAs are more tolerant. And we'll maybe look at that in a minute. This is the respondents' general pest management strategies. And so we start at the top. So the purple is every year the farmer does this. And then the yellow and orange is never used, never done. And the light blue is some years they do it. So these are good organic farmers in general. They do crop rotation every year, crop diversity, fertility management, but most of these aren't really dealing with the insects. Down here, we start to see the insect problems. Here we see scouting. This is organically allowed insecticides, attracting enemies. And then once we get down to this level, they're not doing much of this trapping, prediction tools and things like that. So post-harvest sorting and processing is the most common management tool. If you go to a farmer's market in especially late August, September in Wisconsin, you will, and you see the organic farm stands, you will see the tops of the ears chopped off with a machete. That's right here. 88% inspect the ears for damage and cut off the damaged tips. 62% use foliar sprays of insecticides, mostly Bt-based or spinosad-based. 56% scout or trap to monitor corn earworm, and they probably don't do the scouting themselves or the trapping. There is a trapping network in the Midwest that actually keeps track of how these are moving along. And some of them, a small number, do the direct silk application. Wrong way again, sorry. So we did ask, or Ginny asked some questions to inform the breeding process. And so, as I told you, we're looking at lengthening husks, and we're looking at darkened silks. That's the mason. When you cut the silk, it turns dark like that. So we wanted to know how the farmers felt about these things. And they do think about husk traits. I, as a sweet corn breeder, am really thrilled that their number one thing is flavor. But then a few of them anyway look at husks. And we asked them specifically, how do they think dark silks would affect consumer acceptance? And the dark blue is slight obstacle. How about long husks? And again, the dark blue is significant. The light blue is possibly an obstacle. And then poor tip fill. And they say poor tip fill very strongly is undesirable. And poor tip fill may occur with longer husks because some of the tip kernels probably won't, not probably, but potentially won't get pollinated. I've got the signal that 5 minutes is left, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. This is the interview. She did 12. Most of them were in the upper Midwest, 1 in New York, 2 in California, and 1 in Vermont. So first headline here is CSA consumers are the most tolerant of corn earworm damage. We have the ability to warn them and get them ready. They might just want to cut the tip off. If we had ears at the market, we won't sell any of those damaged ears, but because no one will take them. But the CSA growers say that the consumers don't really have a choice if they're in CSA. There's some difference here. You'll notice this, another CSA person said, there is no tolerance for insect damage in the CSA farmers market or wholesale. There is no tolerance. I think that's a myth. Most people would accept that. It's a myth that people would accept it. And then, I'm not sure it's the same person who said for a long time earworms were mainly accepted in organic corn. It was our belief that it shouldn't be accepted and it shouldn't have to be expected that you're going to get earworms. The practices that we follow are really practices based on trying to eliminate or minimize the impact. Let's see, which one is this? I think that I think everyone would agree on this one. The highest quality standards are the wholesale going into grocery stores and things like that. It's not going to be accepted. Most of what they do is cultural management, diversification, rotation, avoidance, and that late planting, the corn that's being planted to be harvested in the end of August or September, that's almost always going to get earworm damage in Wisconsin. So sweet corn is actually a very low value crop for farmers. So once it gets into later season, that a lot of the organic farmers just stop dealing with it. Future prospects, we're going to continue selection and evaluation of long husks. We're going to continue to improve earworm-resistant assessment methods and pursue collaborations with farmer organizations, especially in earworm research and breeding. The farmers talk about on-farm trapping and scouting, biocontrol, and plant breeding. And thanks to the team, this is last summer's group, and I think Ginny's here, somewhere over here. Ginny's not the one in the front, she's the one in the plaid shirt there. And then thanks to our funders, I always like to say we have a diverse portfolio at Wisconsin. Want to make sure that Organic Farming Research Foundation is noted because they actually funded the survey. So, and if there's any time for questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Could you tell us more about what Mason is?
Mason? Mason is I'm trying to remember the class of chemical. I think it's a flavonoid chemical. And I actually took out of the talk the chemical structure of it. But it was originally found in a corn from Oaxaca. And it's, at high enough levels, it's very effective at controlling the insect. Quite honestly, commercial sweet corn companies, there's a few, like High Mowing, that are 100% organic, but commercial sweet corn companies have avoided it or not used it because many of them are owned by companies that sell herbicides, insecticides. So, and the excuse they've not used it is saying that browning color is undesirable. And I think if a consumer knew that was preventing the use of insecticide, you could use it as a marketing thing as opposed to being undesirable. But it's a flavonoid chemical, and yeah.
We have time for more questions. Oh.
Jim Myers.
So another question about the Mason. Would that ever be acceptable in processing corn? At fresh market, I think.
Processing, it would look. So there's been three Wisconsin sweet corn breeders. I've been there for 35 years, and my predecessor was there for 40-ish. Bob Andrew, you remember Bob? And he would always say, you can never have those dark silks because it looks like horsehair. And I was like, horsehair? He worked at the canneries when the horses brought in the corn. So that's where that comes. So you don't want horsehair in your can. That's not good. Anything else? I'm more than happy to get away. So. Thank you all.